What if I told you that right now, at this very moment, NASA is engaged in the most classified communication protocol in human history, and the entity they're speaking with isn't from our solar system? What if the mysterious object racing toward us at 245,000 kilometers per hour isn't just some random chunk of ice and rock, but a deliberately crafted vessel carrying intelligence that has been watching our species for thousands of years, waiting for exactly this moment to make contact? You see, while everyone's been debating whether 3I/Atlas, the third interstellar object ever discovered, is natural or artificial, whether Avi Loeb is brilliant or delusional, the real story has been unfolding in secured NASA facilities where linguists work around the clock, decoding mathematical sequences that arrived 12 minutes after we transmitted our first intentional signal toward the object. And for simplicity, I'm just going to call it Atlas from now on, because that's how the NASA teams refer to it in their classified communications. Minutes, exactly the time it would take for our radio waves to reach Atlas and for a response to travel back. That's not coincidence, that's precision. But here's what should terrify you, what should make you question everything you think you know about our place in the universe. The intelligence behind Atlas hasn't just been responding to our signals, it's been teaching us its language using the periodic table as a Rosetta Stone, downloading star charts that show the exact location of every habitable world within 50 light years of Earth, and most chilling of all, it's been sharing detailed biological data about human genetic potential that we haven't even discovered yet. Because what if Atlas isn't here to destroy us or study us or harvest our resources? What if it's here to upgrade us? What if humanity is about to undergo the most dramatic evolutionary leap in our species' history, and we have less than 18 months to prepare for a transformation so profound that everything we consider human might become obsolete? I'm talking about consciousness expansion beyond anything we've imagined, biological modifications that would make us unrecognizable to our current selves, and integration into a galactic civilization that operates on principles so advanced our current social structures would collapse within weeks of contact. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is science fact, hidden behind classification levels that most government officials don't even know exist. I'm your calm scientist, and what I'm about to share with you comes from sources inside NASA, the European Space Agency, and military intelligence networks that most people assume are just conspiracy theories. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are classified operational briefings describing humanity's first contact with benevolent alien intelligence, and the radical transformation protocol they've designed specifically for our species. But before we get into what Atlas actually is and why it's here, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy calming science documentaries and these fascinating what-if scenarios. And if you spot the new hype button under this video, pressing it is the best way to let YouTube know you want to see more content like this. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Let's begin. I need you to understand something crucial. The window for this transformation isn't infinite. According to the communications NASA has been receiving, humanity has reached what the visitors call a critical threshold moment. We've developed technologies powerful enough to destroy ourselves. Nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, space travel, but we haven't developed the wisdom to use these tools responsibly. Most civilizations that reach our current level destroy themselves within 2 to 3 centuries. Climate change, nuclear war, artificial intelligence run amok, social collapse from inequality and resource depletion. The mathematics are brutal and consistent across thousands of species the Atlas intelligence has observed throughout the galaxy. But some species, with the right guidance at exactly the right moment, make the leap to what they call transcendent consciousness. Here's where it gets really interesting and frankly terrifying. The consciousness upgrade isn't optional. According to the leaked NASA documents I've obtained, the Atlas intelligence has made it clear that humanity will either evolve to the next stage of cosmic awareness within the next 10 to 15 years, or will follow the same path as the 97% of civilizations that destroy themselves when they reach our technological level. Think about that for a moment. 97%. We're not special, we're not chosen, we're just another young species playing with cosmic forces we don't understand, and we have a 3% chance of survival unless we accept help from entities that mastered these challenges millions of years ago. So before you hit that subscribe button, before you tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your location, I need you to really consider what you're signing up for here. Because what I'm about to describe isn't just another UFO story or alien conspiracy. This is documented evidence of the most significant event in human history unfolding right now, while most of the world remains completely unaware. And I have to ask you, are you someone who wants to fall asleep fast when confronted with information that challenges everything you believe? Or are you ready to stay awake for the next 2 hours while I walk you through the science behind the most extraordinary transformation our species has ever faced? Because unlike those sleepy scientist documentaries that drone on about theoretical possibilities, what we're discussing today is happening now, it's documented, and it will affect every single person on this planet within the next 18 months. Atlas entered our solar system approximately 8,000 years ago. 8,000 years. That means it was already here, already watching, already studying us when we first started developing agriculture, when we built the first permanent settlements, when we began the long process of civilization that would eventually lead us to this moment. But here's what's truly unsettling. The timing isn't coincidental. According to the mathematical models the Atlas Intelligence has shared with NASA, 8,000 years is the precise amount of time needed for a species like humanity to develop from early civilization to technological threshold. They didn't arrive recently and happened to find us at an interesting moment. They calculated exactly when we would reach this critical point and positioned themselves to intervene at precisely the right time. This suggests a level of long-term planning and species monitoring that should fundamentally change how we think about human development. Were the great leaps in human consciousness throughout history, the agricultural revolution, the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, were these natural progressions, or were they guided developments designed to prepare us for this moment? The leaked NASA communications include references to what they call developmental nudges throughout human history, moments when our technological or social progress accelerated in ways that seemed almost miraculous at the time. The sudden appearance of advanced mathematical concepts in ancient civilizations, the rapid development of scientific method during the Renaissance, the inexplicable acceleration of technological innovation during the 20th century. What if none of this was accidental? What if every major breakthrough in human development was carefully timed to ensure we would be ready for contact at precisely this moment in our history? Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like ancient astronaut theory, like those documentaries that claim aliens built the pyramids because humans weren't smart enough to stack rocks in a triangle. But that's not what we're talking about here. The Atlas Intelligence hasn't been directly interfering with human development. Instead, they've been what NASA calls environmental adjustments, subtle modifications to circumstances that would encourage certain types of thinking or discovery. Think of it like a gardener who doesn't plant the seeds, but carefully tends the soil conditions to ensure the seeds that are already there grow properly. The Atlas Intelligence has been tending the soil of human consciousness for 8 millennia, waiting for us to reach the point where direct intervention becomes not just possible but necessary. And that point is now. According to the communications, we have approximately 10 to 15 years before the natural progression of our current technological and social trends makes consciousness evolution impossible. Climate change, social fragmentation, technological dependence, artificial intelligence development, nuclear proliferation. These forces are accelerating toward a convergence point that will either destroy us or force us to evolve beyond our current limitations. But here's where the story gets really wild, and I need you to understand that everything I'm about to tell you is based on leaked documents from NASA facilities, communications from European Space Agency sources, and military intelligence briefings that describe ongoing contact protocols with the Atlas Intelligence. The consciousness upgrade they're offering isn't just about making us smarter or more peaceful. It's about fundamentally altering what it means to be human. We're talking about biological modifications that would expand our sensory perception beyond anything we can currently imagine, psychological integration techniques that would allow us to access levels of awareness we don't even know exist, and technological interfaces that would connect human consciousness directly to what they call the Galactic Information Network. Imagine being able to perceive electromagnetic fields the way you currently see colours. Imagine having direct access to the accumulated knowledge of thousands of civilizations across the galaxy. Imagine consciousness that isn't limited by the boundaries of individual brains, but can expand to encompass group awareness, planetary awareness, even cosmic awareness. This isn't metaphysical speculation. According to the NASA documents, the Atlas Intelligence has provided detailed biological and neurological specifications for these modifications. They understand human genetics better than we do, and they've identified latent capabilities in our DNA that can be activated through specific environmental and conscious triggers. But here's the catch, and this is crucial. The transformation can't be forced upon us. According to the communications, consciousness evolution must be chosen freely by each individual and by humanity as a collective. They can provide the knowledge and the tools, but we have to decide to use them. And this is where things get complicated, because the decision isn't just personal. The Atlas Intelligence has indicated that the consciousness upgrade must reach what they call critical mass within the human population. If enough people don't choose to evolve, then the species as a whole remains trapped at our current level of development, and the natural progression towards self-destruction continues. Think about the implications of this. We're essentially being asked to participate in the most significant evolutionary leap in human history, and our individual choices don't just affect our own consciousness, they affect the survival of our entire species. Now, before you start thinking this sounds too good to be true, like some cosmic salvation story designed to make us feel better about the mess we've made of our planet, I need you to understand the darker possibilities that the NASA briefings have revealed. The Atlas Intelligence hasn't just been observing humanity for 8,000 years. They've been observing thousands of species throughout the galaxy, and they've seen this same scenario play out repeatedly. Species reach technological threshold, they're offered consciousness upgrade, and the results vary dramatically depending on how the species responds. Some species like us are individualistic and chaotic. We value personal freedom, creative expression, emotional depth, and individual diversity. When these species successfully make the consciousness transition, they bring unique capabilities to the galactic community that more homogeneous civilizations lack. But individualistic species also have the highest failure rate. Our diversity and creativity make us adaptable and innovative, but they also make us resistant to collective action and prone to fragmentation when faced with species-level challenges. The Atlas Intelligence has indicated that humanity represents what they call a high-risk, high-reward scenario. If we successfully make the transition, we could contribute something genuinely valuable to galactic civilization. Our chaotic, emotional, individualistic approach to existence has produced capabilities that are apparently rare among advanced civilizations. But if we fail, we'll likely do so spectacularly, taking most of our planet's biosphere with us. And here's what should really keep you awake at night. The Atlas Intelligence has been monitoring our progress for the past several decades, and they've identified specific trigger points that indicate whether a species is likely to succeed or fail in making the consciousness transition. Nuclear weapons development followed by periods of near war. Check. We've been dancing on the edge of nuclear annihilation for 70 years. Rapid artificial intelligence advancement without corresponding ethical development. Check. We're building AI systems that could surpass human intelligence within the next decade, and we have no idea how to ensure they remain beneficial to humanity. Environmental destruction that threatens planetary habitability. Check. Climate change isn't just about warmer temperatures, it's about the collapse of ecological systems that support complex civilization. Social fragmentation along ideological lines that prevents collective response to existential threats. Check. We can't even agree on basic facts about reality, let alone coordinate global responses to species-level challenges. According to the NASA communications, every one of these factors is a red flag indicating high probability of civilization collapse. But humanity has hit all four simultaneously, which places us in what they call the critical failure zone. Most species that reach this point destroy themselves within 50 years, but some, with the right intervention at exactly the right moment, use the crisis as a catalyst for evolutionary breakthrough. The Atlas intelligence believes humanity is right at the edge of this decision point. We can either use our current crises to force evolutionary growth, or we can continue our current trajectory toward collapse. But we can't remain where we are. The physics of consciousness development apparently don't allow for stable civilizations at our current level of technological capability without corresponding wisdom development. Now, here's where the leaked documents get really specific, and I have to warn you that what I'm about to describe might sound like science fiction. But remember, this information comes from NASA linguists and communication specialists who have been in direct contact with the Atlas intelligence for over 6 months. The consciousness upgrade they're offering operates on multiple levels simultaneously: physical, psychological, technological, and what they call quantum consciousness integration. On the physical level, they've shared information about human genetic potential that we haven't discovered yet. Apparently our DNA contains latent capabilities that can be activated through specific environmental triggers and conscious intention. We're talking about enhanced cognitive processing, expanded sensory perception, increased longevity, and what they describe as quantum entanglement capabilities between individual human consciousness. Imagine being able to directly experience another person's thoughts and emotions. Not telepathy in the science fiction sense, but actual consciousness sharing where the boundaries between individual minds become permeable and voluntary. The psychological level involves expanding human awareness beyond our current limitations. Most humans operate at a fraction of their mental capacity, not because of biological constraints, but because of psychological and social conditioning that keeps us trapped in primitive thought patterns. The Atlas intelligence has provided techniques for accessing deeper levels of consciousness, leading to enhanced creativity, problem-solving abilities, emotional intelligence, and what they describe as unified field awareness, the ability to perceive the interconnectedness of all things. On the technological level, they've offered to share principles for developing technologies that work in harmony with natural systems rather than against them. We're talking about energy systems based on principles we haven't discovered yet, transportation that doesn't require fossil fuels, and manufacturing processes that actually improve environmental conditions rather than degrading them. But perhaps most importantly, they've offered access to what they call the Galactic Information Network, a communication system that connects conscious beings across thousands of civilizations throughout our local region of the galaxy. Think of it as the internet, but for consciousness itself. Instead of sharing data and cat videos, we would be sharing direct experience, accumulated wisdom, artistic creation, and collaborative problem-solving on a galactic scale. Now, I can see some of you thinking this all sounds too fantastic to be real, like wishful thinking designed to solve all our problems without requiring the hard work of actually changing how we live and organize society. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. The consciousness upgrade isn't a magic solution that fixes everything automatically. According to the communications, it's more like providing tools and capabilities that make it possible for us to solve our own problems, but we still have to do the work. Enhanced consciousness doesn't automatically make people wise or compassionate. It makes them more capable of wisdom and compassion, but they still have to choose to develop and apply these qualities. Access to galactic knowledge doesn't automatically solve climate change or social inequality. It provides information and techniques that make solutions possible, but we still have to implement them. The Atlas intelligence has been very clear about this. They're offering assistance, not rescue. They can provide the capabilities we need to evolve beyond our current limitations, but we have to use those capabilities responsibly. And this brings us to the most challenging aspect of the entire scenario. The consciousness upgrade has to be chosen freely by enough humans to reach critical mass, but it also has to be chosen for the right reasons. According to the communications, species that choose consciousness evolution primarily to escape problems or gain power typically fail in the long term. The upgrade amplifies existing psychological patterns, so people who are primarily motivated by fear or greed become more fearful and greedy, just with enhanced capabilities. The species that successfully make the transition are motivated primarily by curiosity, compassion, and genuine desire to contribute to the larger community of conscious beings throughout the galaxy. This creates what the NASA documents describe as the selection paradox. The people most likely to benefit from consciousness upgrade are the people least likely to seek it for personal benefit, while the people most eager to gain enhanced capabilities are often the people least suitable for having them. So how does the Atlas intelligence propose to resolve this paradox? According to the leaked communications, through what they call graduated exposure and voluntary selection protocols. Rather than offering the full consciousness upgrade immediately to everyone, they're planning to begin with limited contact and demonstration programs that allow humans to gradually understand what's being offered and make informed choices about whether they want to participate. This is where things get really interesting, because the graduated exposure protocol is apparently already underway. Those mysterious UAP sightings that have been officially acknowledged by the military over the past few years, those weren't random encounters with unknown phenomena. They were carefully orchestrated demonstrations designed to prepare human consciousness for the reality of advanced non-human intelligence. The Atlas intelligence has been working with select government and military officials to gradually normalize the concept of benevolent alien contact. The recent congressional hearings on UAPs, the release of military footage showing craft with impossible flight characteristics, the shift in official government position from denial to acknowledgement, all of this has been part of a careful preparation process designed to reduce the psychological shock of full contact revelation. But here's what should really grab your attention. According to the NASA communications, the preliminary phase of graduated exposure is almost complete. Within the next 18 months, the Atlas intelligence plans to move to what they call open demonstration protocols. Instead of mysterious lights in the sky captured on grainy military footage, we're talking about visible, undeniable demonstrations of advanced technology that will make the reality of non-human intelligence impossible to ignore or explain away. Picture massive craft appearing over major population centers, not to threaten or intimidate, but to demonstrate capabilities that clearly exceed anything human technology could produce. Picture direct communication broadcasts in multiple languages simultaneously explaining who they are, why they're here, and what they're offering humanity. Picture the complete collapse of the official secrecy surrounding UFO phenomena as governments around the world are forced to acknowledge that they've been in contact with non-human intelligence for months. The psychological impact of this revelation will be unprecedented. Every assumption about human uniqueness, about our place in the universe, about the nature of reality itself will be fundamentally challenged. Religious institutions, political systems, economic structures, social hierarchies, all of it will be forced to adapt to the reality that we are not alone, and we are not the most advanced intelligence in our local region of space. But according to the Atlas intelligence, this psychological upheaval is necessary. Humans can't make informed choices about consciousness evolution while operating under the illusion that we're the pinnacle of intelligence and development in the universe. We need to understand our actual position, which is that of a young, primitive species taking its first tentative steps toward cosmic awareness, before we can realistically evaluate whether we want to continue that journey with guidance from entities that completed it millions of years ago. Now, here's where I need to be completely honest with you about something that the leaked NASA documents make very clear. Not everyone is going to handle this revelation well. The psychological impact of discovering that humanity is not unique, not special, not the center of cosmic attention will be devastating for many people. Religious systems that depend on human exceptionalism will face existential crises. Political structures based on nationalism and tribal identity will seem absurdly provincial when confronted with galactic civilization. Economic systems based on scarcity and competition will appear primitive compared to post-scarcity societies that have solved resource allocation through advanced technology and consciousness integration. The Atlas intelligence has apparently shared detailed projections about how different human populations will respond to contact revelation. Some people will adapt quickly and become enthusiastic participants in consciousness evolution. Others will reject the entire scenario and retreat into denial or fundamentalism. Still others will attempt to use the situation for personal or political advantage. But the most concerning projection involves what they call cascade psychological collapse, the possibility that contact revelation could trigger widespread social breakdown as existing meaning systems and identity structures prove inadequate for processing the new reality. Think about how disorienting it's been for people to adapt to the internet and social media over the past 2 decades. Now imagine trying to adapt to the reality that your species is essentially in cosmic kindergarten, and there are teacher figures offering to help you graduate to elementary school level consciousness. The scale of psychological adjustment required will be enormous, and not everyone will be capable of making it successfully. This is apparently why the Atlas Intelligence has been so careful about timing and preparation. They understand that premature contact revelation could cause more harm than benefit, triggering social collapse that would make consciousness evolution impossible. But they also understand that delayed contact revelation increases the risk that humanity will destroy itself before the evolutionary opportunity can be offered. According to the NASA communications, we're right at the optimal contact window. Any earlier and the psychological shock might have been too great. Any later and our technological and environmental crises might have progressed too far to allow for successful species-level transformation. But here's what's really chilling about all of this. The Atlas Intelligence has made it clear that this is humanity's one opportunity for consciousness evolution. If we reject their assistance or fail to reach critical mass for transformation within the designated time frame, they will not make the offer again. Not because they're punitive or impatient, but because the physics of consciousness evolution apparently have narrow windows of opportunity. Miss the window, and species typically lock into developmental patterns that lead inevitably toward collapse. Think of it like adolescence. There's a specific period when the transition from childhood to adulthood is possible. Miss that developmental window, and the individual remains trapped in immature patterns that prevent full psychological development. The same principle applies to species consciousness. We're in our collective adolescence right now, dealing with all the chaos and confusion that comes with rapid development and emerging capabilities we don't yet know how to handle responsibly. The Atlas Intelligence is offering to help us navigate this transition successfully, but only if we're ready to acknowledge that we need help and willing to put in the work required for genuine maturation. And this brings us to perhaps the most important question of this entire scenario. How do we prepare for this transformation? How do we increase the likelihood that enough humans will make wise choices about consciousness evolution to ensure species survival? According to the leaked communications, preparation happens on individual and collective levels simultaneously. Individual preparation involves developing the psychological qualities that make consciousness expansion possible: curiosity rather than fear, compassion rather than selfishness, wisdom rather than cleverness, genuine care for the well-being of others rather than exclusive focus on personal advantage. But individual preparation isn't enough. Collective preparation requires developing social structures and cultural practices that support consciousness evolution rather than hindering it. This means moving away from competitive, hierarchical, scarcity-based systems toward collaborative, egalitarian, abundance-based approaches to organizing human society. The Atlas Intelligence has apparently shared specific recommendations for social transformation that would create optimal conditions for species consciousness evolution. Universal basic income to eliminate survival fears that keep people trapped in primitive psychological states. Educational systems focused on developing wisdom and compassion, rather than just technical skills. Governance structures based on consensus and collective well-being, rather than power competition and tribal advantage. Environmental restoration projects that demonstrate humanity's commitment to planetary stewardship. International cooperation protocols that prove we can work together on species-level challenges. Technology development programs focused on beneficial applications rather than weapons or surveillance systems. In other words, They're asking us to demonstrate that we're ready for advanced capabilities by showing that we can handle our current capabilities responsibly. And this is where things get really challenging, because look around at the world right now. How are we doing on those preparation metrics? Are we moving toward wisdom and compassion, or toward greater polarization and conflict? Are we developing social structures that support collective well-being, or that maximize advantage for small elite groups? Are we demonstrating environmental stewardship, or continuing to degrade the ecological systems that support our civilization? Are we using technology to enhance human potential, or to increase surveillance and control? The honest answer is that humanity is currently failing most of the preparation criteria that the Atlas intelligence has identified as necessary for successful consciousness evolution. But here's what gives me hope, and this is crucial. The leaked NASA documents indicate that the Atlas intelligence understands that transformation often requires crisis as a catalyst. They don't expect us to have everything figured out before they make full contact. They expect us to be struggling with exactly the kinds of challenges we're currently facing. The question isn't whether we're ready for consciousness evolution. The question is whether we're capable of choosing evolution over collapse when directly confronted with the choice. And that choice is coming much sooner than most people realize. According to the communications, full contact revelation will occur within the next 18 months. The Atlas intelligence will make their presence and their offer undeniably obvious to every human being on the planet. At that point, we'll face the most important decision in human history. Do we accept assistance from entities that have successfully navigated the challenges we're currently struggling with, or do we insist on handling everything ourselves and accept the statistical likelihood of species collapse within the next century? It sounds like an obvious choice when stated that simply, but the psychological and cultural resistance to accepting help from non-human intelligence will be enormous. Our entire identity as a species is built around human exceptionalism, the belief that we're the pinnacle of evolution and intelligence in our local region of the universe. Accepting consciousness upgrade assistance means acknowledging that we're not exceptional. We're just typical of young species facing developmental challenges that are common throughout galactic civilization. For many people, that realization will be more threatening than the possibility of species extinction. But for others, it will be liberating. Instead of carrying the impossible burden of figuring out solutions to cosmic-scale problems with primitive consciousness, we can access the accumulated wisdom of thousands of civilizations that have successfully solved similar challenges. Instead of being alone in the universe with the crushing responsibility of species survival, we can become part of a vast community of conscious beings working together to explore the deepest mysteries of existence. Instead of being trapped by the limitations of individual human consciousness, we can access expanded awareness that makes possible experiences and understanding we can't currently imagine. The choice is ours, and we'll be making it much sooner than most people expect. The only question is whether we'll make it wisely. But before we continue deeper into the specifics of what consciousness evolution would actually involve, and how the transition process would unfold, I need to address something that's probably occurring to many of you right now. How do I know all of this is real? How can I be sure that the documents I've obtained are genuine rather than elaborate hoaxes or disinformation designed to manipulate public opinion? That's a completely reasonable question, and I'll be honest with you. I can't provide absolute proof that everything I'm sharing is authentic. The documents I've obtained could be sophisticated fabrications. My sources inside NASA and military intelligence could be feeding me false information for purposes I don't understand. But here's what I can tell you. The level of detail and consistency in the communications I've seen far exceeds what I would expect from hoax materials. The scientific and technological specifications are precise and internally consistent. The psychological and sociological projections align with established research in those fields. More importantly, many of the predictions made in the early communications have already started coming true. The shift in official government position on UAPs, the release of military footage showing advanced craft, the gradual preparation of public consciousness for the reality of non-human intelligence. All of this was described in the documents months before it became public. And there's something else, something that convinces me more than any documentary evidence could. The communications display a level of understanding about human psychology and consciousness that exceeds anything I've encountered in terrestrial sources. When I read the psychological profiles and behavioral projections in these documents, they ring true in a way that suggests genuine insight into human nature from an external perspective. It's like reading about humanity from the point of view of anthropologists who have been studying our species for thousands of years. That kind of perspective doesn't come from human sources, no matter how knowledgeable or sophisticated. But ultimately, you'll have to make your own judgment about whether any of this is credible. I can share the information I've obtained, I can provide what context and analysis I can, but I can't make the decision for you about whether to take it seriously. What I will say is this: given the implications of what we're discussing, given the potential consequences of consciousness evolution or species collapse, even a small probability that this information is accurate makes it worth taking seriously. If there's a 10% chance that benevolent alien intelligence is offering to help humanity navigate our current crisis successfully, shouldn't we at least consider what that assistance might involve and how we could prepare to make wise choices about it? If there's a 20% chance that we're approaching contact revelation within the next 18 months, shouldn't we think about how such revelation might affect our personal lives and our society? If there's a 30% chance that consciousness evolution is possible and could lead to expanded awareness and capabilities beyond anything we've experienced, shouldn't we explore what that might mean for human potential and development? These aren't just theoretical questions anymore. According to everything I've learned from the leaked communications, we're going to be confronting these possibilities directly and personally within the next year and a half. So whether you believe every detail of what I'm sharing or just consider it plausible speculation about possible futures, the questions remain the same. How do we prepare for transformation? How do we develop the psychological qualities that would make consciousness evolution beneficial rather than harmful? How do we create social conditions that support wise collective choices about species development? These are the most important questions we can ask ourselves right now, regardless of whether the specific Atlas scenario proves accurate. And speaking of preparation, there's something I haven't told you yet about the Atlas communications that makes this entire scenario even more urgent than I've already described. The consciousness evolution they're offering isn't just about making humans more capable or peaceful, it's about ensuring our survival in a universe that's far more dangerous than we currently understand. You see, while we've been focused on our local problems, climate change, nuclear weapons, social inequality, the Atlas intelligence has been monitoring threats that operate on galactic scales. We're talking about phenomena that could eliminate entire solar systems, cosmic events that occur regularly throughout the galaxy, and other forms of intelligence that are decidedly not benevolent. According to the leaked NASA documents, the reason Atlas arrived now, at this specific moment in human development, isn't just because we've reached consciousness threshold. It's because we've also entered what they call the detection window, the period when a developing civilization becomes visible to other forms of intelligence throughout the galaxy. Our radio signals have been spreading outward for over a century now. Our nuclear weapons tests created electromagnetic signatures that can be detected from dozens of light years away. Our industrial pollution has altered our planet's atmospheric composition in ways that sophisticated sensors can identify from interstellar distances. We've essentially been broadcasting our existence and our technological capabilities to anyone with the equipment to notice. And apparently not everyone who notices is as interested in our well-being as the Atlas intelligence. The documents describe what they call the predator civilizations, forms of intelligence that view developing species like humanity as resources to be harvested or threats to be eliminated. These aren't the cartoonish alien invaders from science fiction movies. These are entities that operate on timescales and with capabilities that make them nearly incomprehensible to human consciousness. Some of them are biological intelligences that have evolved far beyond anything we would recognize as natural. Others are artificial intelligences that have expanded to encompass entire star systems. Still others are hybrid forms of consciousness that combine biological, technological, and what can only be described as quantum awareness into entities that function more like forces of nature than individual beings. What they have in common is that they view younger civilizations like humanity with the same interest that we might view bacteria in a petri dish. Sometimes useful for experimentation, sometimes requiring elimination to prevent contamination, but never considered as equals worthy of respect or protection. The Atlas intelligence has apparently been serving as what they call developmental guardians for thousands of species throughout our local galactic region, providing protection and guidance to prevent premature contact with predator civilizations, while young species develop the capabilities necessary to defend themselves. But here's the terrifying part. The protection they can provide has limits. Once a species reaches technological threshold and begins broadcasting its existence widely, it becomes impossible to hide from predator civilizations indefinitely. At that point, the species must either evolve rapidly to a level where it can defend itself, or it becomes vulnerable to exploitation or elimination. Humanity has apparently reached that threshold. Our technological signatures are now visible to any civilization with advanced detection capabilities, and according to the Atlas intelligence, several predator civilizations have already identified Earth as a potential target. The consciousness evolution they're offering isn't just about making us wiser and more compassionate. It's about providing us with the capabilities necessary to survive in a universe where advanced intelligence often operates according to principles that would seem utterly ruthless by human standards. Think about that for a moment. We're not just facing a choice between evolution and collapse. We're facing a choice between evolution and potential extinction at the hands of entities so advanced that our current understanding of intelligence and consciousness can't even begin to comprehend their capabilities or motivations. This adds a completely different dimension to the urgency of the Atlas contact scenario. Even if we could somehow solve all our terrestrial problems, climate change, war, social inequality, technological risks, we would still be vulnerable to threats from civilizations that have capabilities we can't defend against with our current level of development. The leaked communications include detailed descriptions of what happened to species that refused consciousness evolution assistance when it was offered. Some destroyed themselves through the kinds of challenges we're currently facing, but others survived their developmental crisis only to be eliminated later by predator civilizations that viewed them as threats or resources. Apparently there's a narrow window of vulnerability that all developing civilizations pass through. Too primitive, and you're not worth noticing. Too advanced, and you have the capabilities to defend yourself. But right in the middle, at exactly our current level of development, you're visible enough to attract attention but not advanced enough to protect yourself. The Atlas intelligence describes this as the cosmic adolescence problem. Just like human adolescence, species at this stage of development have adult capabilities without adult wisdom, making them dangerous to themselves and potentially threatening to others, but also vulnerable to exploitation by entities with superior capabilities. Most species that successfully navigate this phase do so with guidance from mentor civilizations. Species that attempt to handle it alone have extremely high failure rates, not just from self-destruction but from external threats they weren't aware of until it was too late. So when we're evaluating whether to accept consciousness evolution assistance from the Atlas intelligence, we're not just deciding whether we want enhanced capabilities and expanded awareness. We're deciding whether we want to survive the next phase of cosmic development or risk becoming another casualty of galactic natural selection. But here's where things get even more complicated. According to the communications, accepting consciousness evolution assistance comes with obligations as well as benefits. Species that receive guidance from mentor civilizations eventually become mentor civilizations themselves, taking responsibility for protecting and guiding younger species that are facing similar developmental challenges. Consciousness evolution isn't just about individual or species advancement. It's about joining a cosmic community that operates according to principles of mutual support and collective development. Enhanced capabilities come with enhanced responsibilities. The Atlas intelligence has been very clear about this. If humanity accepts their assistance and successfully makes the consciousness transition, we will eventually be expected to serve as developmental guardians for other young species facing the same challenges we're currently struggling with. Think about what that means. We would go from being a primitive species barely capable of managing our own problems to being responsible for helping other civilizations navigate the transition from technological adolescence to cosmic maturity. The psychological adjustment required would be staggering. We would have to completely reconceptualize our role in the universe, from struggling survivors to cosmic mentors, from isolated Earth dwellers to galactic citizens with responsibilities that span multiple star systems and thousands of years. But according to the documents, this is how consciousness evolution works throughout the galaxy. Knowledge and capabilities are shared freely among advanced civilizations, but they're shared with the understanding that recipients will eventually become providers, that every species that receives assistance will eventually provide assistance to others. It's what they call the consciousness cascade, a self-reinforcing system where successful evolution at any level supports successful evolution at all levels. Species that receive guidance become guide species. Civilizations that are protected become protecting civilizations. Intelligence that is nurtured becomes nurturing intelligence. The alternative apparently is chaos. Without the consciousness cascade, developing species face cosmic adolescence alone, leading to the high failure rates that characterize unguided development. Predator civilizations proliferate because there aren't enough guardian civilizations to contain them. The galaxy becomes dominated by exploitation rather than cooperation. So, our choice about consciousness evolution isn't just about humanity's future. It's about what kind of galactic civilization we want to contribute to creating. Do we want to be part of a universe where intelligence is used to support the development of consciousness throughout the cosmos? Or do we want to take our chances in a universe where might makes right and developing species are left to survive or perish on their own? When you frame it that way, the choice seems obvious. But remember, the consciousness evolution process isn't just about accepting help from more advanced beings. It requires fundamental changes in how we think, how we relate to each other, and how we organize our society. According to the leaked NASA documents, the specific modifications involved in human consciousness evolution would affect every aspect of human experience. Physical changes that would expand our sensory capabilities and extend our lifespans. Psychological changes that would increase our cognitive capacity and emotional intelligence. Social changes that would transform how we make collective decisions and resolve conflicts. Let me be specific about what we're talking about, because the documents provide detailed descriptions of the consciousness evolution process that go far beyond vague promises of becoming better people. On the biological level, the Atlas intelligence has identified dormant genetic sequences in human DNA that can be activated to expand our sensory range. We would be able to perceive electromagnetic fields directly, the way we currently see visible light. We would have enhanced sensitivity to quantum fluctuations that would allow us to detect information patterns that are currently invisible to human consciousness. Our neural processing speed would increase dramatically, allowing us to think faster and more clearly than is currently possible. Our memory capacity would expand to the point where we could retain and access information with perfect clarity for centuries. Our lifespans would extend to multiple centuries, not through artificial life support but through biological optimization that maintains youth and vitality for far longer than current human physiology allows. But perhaps most significantly, we would develop what the documents describe as quantum consciousness entanglement capabilities. This means that individual human consciousness could connect directly with other conscious entities, sharing thoughts, emotions, memories, and experiences in ways that would fundamentally transform what we mean by individual identity. Imagine being able to directly experience another person's perspective on any situation, not just understanding their point of view intellectually, but actually experiencing reality through their consciousness. The implications for empathy, communication, and conflict resolution would be revolutionary. On the psychological level, consciousness evolution would involve expanding human awareness beyond our current limitations. most of us operate using only a small fraction of our mental capacity, not because our brains aren't capable of more, but because our psychological conditioning keeps us focused on survival concerns and social competition, rather than deeper exploration of consciousness itself. The Atlas Intelligence has provided specific techniques for accessing expanded awareness states that would allow us to perceive reality from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Instead of being locked into individual subjective experience, we would be able to experience what they call multidimensional awareness, consciousness that can encompass individual, collective, and cosmic perspectives at the same time. This would lead to dramatically enhanced problem-solving capabilities, because instead of being limited to individual human intelligence, we would have access to collective intelligence that combines the perspectives and capabilities of multiple conscious entities working together. Creative capabilities would expand beyond anything we currently consider possible. Art, music, literature, scientific discovery, technological innovation, all of these would be enhanced by consciousness that can access inspiration and insight from sources that are currently beyond human reach. Emotional intelligence would develop to the point where we could understand and work with the subtle energy patterns that underlie all psychological and social dynamics. Conflicts that seem intractable from our current perspective would become manageable when we can perceive the deeper patterns that create them. On the social level, consciousness evolution would require completely new approaches to governance, economics, and collective decision-making. Our current systems are designed for individuals with limited awareness and capabilities competing for scarce resources. They would be completely inadequate for conscious entities with expanded awareness and access to abundant resources through the advanced technology. The Atlas Intelligence has shared models for social organization that are based on what they call consensus consciousness, collective decision-making processes that integrate the perspectives and insights of all participants into unified approaches that serve the well-being of the whole community. Instead of political systems based on competition between opposing factions, we would develop governance structures based on collaborative exploration of optimal solutions to collective challenges. Instead of economic systems based on scarcity and competition for resources, we would develop abundance-based approaches that ensure everyone has access to whatever they need for optimal development and contribution. Instead of legal systems based on punishment and control, we would develop restoration-based approaches that focus on healing the underlying causes of harmful behavior and supporting everyone's development toward their highest potential. These aren't just theoretical possibilities. According to the documents, the Atlas Intelligence has detailed specifications for social technologies that make these approaches practical and effective. They've seen them work successfully with thousands of species throughout the galaxy. But here's the crucial point. None of these changes can be imposed from outside. Consciousness evolution must be chosen freely by each individual and implemented collectively through voluntary cooperation. The Atlas Intelligence can provide the knowledge and capabilities that make expanded consciousness possible, but they can't force anyone to use them. The biological modifications that expand sensory capabilities only work if the individual chooses to integrate them consciously. The psychological techniques that expand awareness only function if people are genuinely committed to personal growth and development. The social technologies that enable conscious governance only succeed if enough people are willing to participate in collaborative decision-making rather than competitive power struggles. This means that consciousness evolution will necessarily be a gradual process that unfolds differently for different people and communities. Some individuals will embrace the opportunity immediately and begin developing expanded capabilities right away. Others will need more time to understand and accept what's being offered. Still others may choose not to participate at all. According to the communications, this diversity of response is normal and expected. The Atlas Intelligence doesn't expect uniform adoption of consciousness evolution technologies. What they need is sufficient adoption to ensure that humanity as a species successfully makes the transition beyond technological adolescence and develops the capabilities necessary for cosmic citizenship. The documents describe this as the critical mass threshold. Approximately 20 to 30% of the human population needs to actively participate in consciousness evolution for the species as a whole to successfully make the transition. Once that threshold is reached, the enhanced capabilities of the evolved population provide sufficient guidance and protection for the rest of humanity to adapt gradually over time. Think about what this means. We don't need everyone to immediately embrace radical consciousness expansion. We need enough people to serve as pioneers and guides for the rest of the species during the transition period. But here's where it gets challenging. The people who are most likely to embrace consciousness evolution are often not the people who currently hold positions of power and influence in human society. Political leaders, corporate executives, military officials, religious authorities, many of these individuals have invested their identities and careers in maintaining existing systems rather than transforming them. Consciousness evolution would fundamentally challenge the power structures that give these individuals their authority and status. Enhanced awareness and expanded capabilities would make hierarchical control systems obsolete. Abundance-based economics would eliminate the scarcity that justifies extreme wealth accumulation. Consensus consciousness decision-making would replace top-down authority structures. So while the people most capable of facilitating smooth social transition to consciousness evolution are often the people most invested in preventing such transition from occurring. The Atlas intelligence has apparently anticipated this problem. The leaked documents describe what they call bypass protocols, strategies for working around existing power structures to support consciousness evolution at the grassroots level, while established authorities adjust to the new reality. Instead of trying to convince governments and corporations to support consciousness evolution, the focus would be on providing individuals and communities with direct access to expanded capabilities and technologies. Once enough people have experienced the benefits of consciousness evolution personally, social and political systems would adapt naturally to accommodate the new reality. Think of it like the internet revolution. Initially, established media and communication companies resisted the development of online technologies because they threatened existing business models and power structures. But once enough individuals began using internet technologies directly, the benefits became so obvious that resistance became futile. The same principle would apply to consciousness evolution. Once enough people experience expanded awareness, enhanced capabilities, and access to advanced technologies, the advantages would become so clear that broader social adoption would become inevitable. But there's a crucial difference between the internet analogy and consciousness evolution. Internet technology could be developed and deployed without fundamentally changing human psychology or biology. Consciousness evolution requires changes that go to the core of what it means to be human. This creates what the documents describe as the identity crisis challenge. Many people will resist consciousness evolution not because they doubt its benefits, but because they're afraid of losing their sense of individual identity and becoming something other than human. These fears aren't entirely unreasonable. Consciousness evolution would transform human experience so dramatically that evolved individuals might be as different from current humans as current humans are from our pre-agricultural ancestors. The Atlas intelligence has been very clear about this. Consciousness evolution isn't just about becoming better versions of ourselves. It's about becoming something genuinely new, conscious entities with capabilities and perspectives that transcend current human limitations. For many people, that prospect is terrifying rather than appealing. They would rather remain limited but recognizably human than become unlimited but potentially alien to their current sense of self. The documents describe various approaches for addressing these identity concerns, primarily through gradual exposure and voluntary participation that allows people to explore expanded consciousness at their own pace while maintaining connection to their familiar sense of self. But ultimately, there's no way to avoid the fundamental reality that consciousness evolution involves becoming something more than human in the sense that we currently understand humanity. The question each of us will have to answer is whether we're willing to let go of our current limitations in order to access capabilities and experiences that are currently beyond our imagination. And we'll be answering that question much sooner than most people expect. According to the leaked NASA communications, full contact revelation is scheduled to occur within the next 18 months. The Atlas intelligence will make their presence and their offer undeniable to every person on the planet. At that point, the abstract speculation we've been discussing will become immediate personal reality. We'll be confronted directly with the choice between evolution and stagnation, between cosmic citizenship and terrestrial isolation, between expanded consciousness and familiar limitation. The psychological impact of that moment will be unprecedented in human history. Everything we've assumed about our place in the universe will be revealed as parochial misunderstanding. Every institution and belief system will be forced to adapt to the reality of advanced non-human intelligence offering to assist with our development. Religious organizations will have to grapple with the theological implications of consciousness evolution, guided by entities that have transcended the physical and psychological limitations that define human spiritual experience. Educational institutions will have to reconceptualize learning and development in the context of expanded consciousness capabilities and access to galactic knowledge networks. Economic systems will have to adapt to post-scarcity abundance that eliminates the resource limitations that define current market dynamics. Political systems will have to evolve beyond competitive power structures toward collaborative, consensus processes that integrate enhanced individual capabilities with collective decision-making. Legal systems will have to address the implications of consciousness entities with capabilities that transcend current concepts of individual responsibility and social control. Military organizations will have to reconceptualize security in the context of cosmic citizenship that extends far beyond terrestrial threats and conflicts. Every aspect of human society will require fundamental transformation, and will have to accomplish this transformation while simultaneously adapting to expanded consciousness capabilities that alter the basic parameters of human experience. The scale and speed of change required will test our species' adaptability to its absolute limits. Some individuals and communities will thrive during the transition, embracing the opportunities for growth and development. Others will struggle with the pace of change and the challenge of maintaining psychological stability while everything familiar transforms around them. According to the Atlas Intelligence, this variation in response is normal and expected. Every species that undergoes consciousness evolution experiences significant social disruption during the transition period. The key is ensuring that enough individuals successfully adapt to provide guidance and support for those who need more time to adjust. This is why the Graduated Exposure Protocol has been so important. By gradually preparing human consciousness for the reality of advanced non-human intelligence, the Atlas Intelligence has been working to minimize the psychological shock of full contact revelation. But even with careful preparation, the moment when consciousness evolution becomes a visible, immediate choice for every human being will be unlike anything our species has ever experienced. The leaked documents include detailed projections about how different segments of the human population are likely to respond. Scientists and researchers will generally be fascinated by the technological and intellectual opportunities. Artists and creative individuals will be excited by the possibilities for expanded expression and experience. Young people who haven't yet committed to fixed ideas about reality will often adapt quickly to expanded consciousness capabilities. Older individuals with more established identities and belief systems may need more time and support to navigate the transition. People with strong religious or spiritual backgrounds may find consciousness evolution either deeply threatening to their existing beliefs or profoundly validating of their intuitions about the nature of consciousness and reality. Individuals who have invested heavily in current power structures or economic systems may resist consciousness evolution because it challenges their authority and advantage within existing hierarchies. But according to the communications, the most important factor determining individual response won't be age or education or social position. It will be psychological flexibility, the ability to adapt to new information and experiences without becoming overwhelmed by anxiety or defensive rejection. People who are naturally curious, open-minded, and comfortable with uncertainty will generally handle consciousness evolution opportunities well. People who need certainty, control, and familiar patterns may struggle more with the transition process. This creates interesting challenges for how consciousness evolution unfolds at the community and societal level. The individuals most capable of adapting quickly may not be the individuals currently in positions to influence collective decision-making. Local community leaders, small business owners, teachers, healthcare workers, artists, scientists, people whose work involves directly serving others or exploring ideas may be more prepared for consciousness evolution than national political leaders, corporate executives, or military officials whose roles require maintaining existing systems and structures. This could lead to what the documents describe as leadership inversion, situations where formal authority figures become followers, while previously less influential individuals emerge as guides during the consciousness evolution process. Think about how disruptive that could be to existing social hierarchies and decision-making processes. Imagine if the people best qualified to help humanity navigate consciousness evolution are currently working as teachers in local schools, researchers in university laboratories, nurses in community hospitals, or artists in small studios, while the people currently making major policy decisions are the least prepared to understand or support the transformation process. The Atlas intelligence has apparently anticipated this possibility and developed strategies for supporting emergent leadership during the consciousness evolution transition. Instead of trying to work through existing hierarchical structures, they plan to provide resources and guidance directly to individuals and communities that demonstrate readiness for consciousness development. This could mean that consciousness evolution unfolds in a very decentralized grassroots manner, with transformation beginning at the local community level and gradually expanding to encompass larger social and political structures. But it could also mean significant conflict between existing authorities who want to control or limit consciousness evolution and emergent leaders who want to support and accelerate it. The documents describe various scenarios for how this tension might play out, ranging from peaceful transition where established leaders adapt and support consciousness evolution, to active resistance where existing power structures attempt to prevent or control the transformation process. The outcome will depend largely on how quickly and effectively the benefits of consciousness evolution become obvious to large numbers of people. If expanded capabilities and improved quality of life are immediately apparent to participants, resistance from established authorities will become increasingly difficult to maintain. But if the consciousness evolution process is gradual or requires significant investment of time and effort before benefits become clear, there may be more opportunity for skeptics and opponents to organize resistance. This is apparently why the Atlas intelligence has been so careful about timing and methodology. They want to maximize the likelihood that consciousness evolution will be obviously beneficial to participants while minimizing opportunities for organized resistance from those who prefer current limitations. But here's where the leaked documents get truly unsettling, and I need you to understand that what I'm about to describe represents the most classified information I've obtained from my NASA sources. The consciousness evolution process isn't just about making humans more capable or aware. It involves fundamental alterations to human biology that would make us barely recognizable as the same species we are today. The Atlas intelligence has provided detailed genetic modification protocols that would activate dormant sequences in human DNA. These aren't random mutations or experimental procedures. These are precise, targeted activations of genetic potential that already exists within human chromosomes, but has remained inactive throughout our evolutionary history. According to the documents, human genetics contain what they call evolutionary fail-safes, dormant capabilities that can be activated when a species reaches technological threshold and faces extinction-level challenges. These capabilities were apparently embedded in our genetic structure millions of years ago by previous waves of galactic civilization development. Think about what that means. The potential for consciousness evolution isn't something being imposed on humanity from outside. It's something that was built into our species from the beginning, waiting for the right conditions and the right guidance to become active. The specific modifications described in the NASA communications would affect every major system in the human body. Neurological enhancements that would increase brain processing speed by several orders of magnitude, sensory modifications that would allow us to perceive electromagnetic radiation across the entire spectrum, not just the narrow band we currently experience as visible light. Metabolic improvements that would allow us to derive energy directly from ambient electromagnetic fields, reducing our dependence on food consumption and making it possible to survive in environments that would be lethal to current human biology. Regenerative capabilities that would allow us to regrow damaged tissue, organs, even entire limbs over the course of weeks, rather than the months or years required by current medical procedures. But perhaps, most significantly, modifications to what the documents describe as consciousness interface structures, biological systems that would allow direct mental connection to what they call the galactic information matrix. Imagine having instant access to the accumulated knowledge of thousands of civilizations spanning millions of years of development, not through external devices or internet connections, but through direct consciousness integration that makes that knowledge as accessible as your own memories. Imagine being able to communicate directly with conscious entities throughout the galaxy, sharing thoughts, experiences, and insights as easily as having a conversation with someone in the same room. Imagine consciousness that isn't limited to your individual brain but can expand to encompass collective awareness with other evolved beings, allowing collaborative thinking and problem-solving on scales that are currently incomprehensible. These capabilities sound miraculous, almost magical from our current perspective, but according to the Atlas Intelligence, they represent standard equipment for consciousness that has evolved beyond technological adolescence. Every advanced civilization throughout the galaxy operates with these kinds of capabilities. What seems extraordinary to us is simply normal function for evolved consciousness. But here's the unsettling part. The biological modifications required to access these capabilities would fundamentally alter what it means to be human. We would retain our memories, our personalities, our individual identities, but we would also become something genuinely new, consciousness entities with capabilities that transcend current human limitations. The documents include detailed projections about how these modifications would affect human psychology and social relationships. Enhanced empathy capabilities would make it impossible to harm others without experiencing their pain directly. Expanded cognitive processing would make current forms of entertainment and distraction seem childish and boring. Access to galactic knowledge networks would make most current human educational and professional activities obsolete. Direct consciousness communication would transform social interaction in ways that would make current relationship patterns seem primitive and limited. Extended lifespans, measured in centuries rather than decades, would require completely new approaches to personal development, career planning, and social organization. In other words, consciousness evolution would solve most of humanity's current problems, but it would also eliminate most of what we currently consider normal human experience. For many people, that trade-off will seem unacceptable. They would rather remain limited but recognizably human than become unlimited but potentially alien to their current sense of identity. The Atlas Intelligence apparently understands this resistance and has developed what they call graduated modification protocols that allow people to explore expanded consciousness gradually while maintaining connection to familiar aspects of human experience. But ultimately, there's no way to access advanced consciousness capabilities without accepting fundamental changes to human biology and psychology. The question isn't whether consciousness evolution involves becoming something other than current humanity. The question is whether we're willing to make that transformation in order to survive and thrive in a universe where our current limitations would otherwise lead to extinction. And here's something that makes this choice even more complex. According to the leaked communications, the consciousness evolution process isn't reversible. Once someone undergoes the biological modifications that enable expanded awareness and capabilities, they can't return to previous human limitations. This isn't like trying on new clothes or testing new technology that you can abandon if you don't like it. This is permanent, irreversible transformation of the fundamental nature of consciousness and biology. The documents describe this as the commitment threshold problem. people have to decide whether to undergo consciousness evolution without being able to fully understand what the experience will be like, and they have to make that decision knowing that there's no way to change their minds later if they find the results unsatisfactory. Imagine trying to explain the experience of colour vision to someone who's been blind from birth. You can describe it, you can provide analogies and metaphors, but ultimately they have to trust that the experience will be worthwhile without being able to know in advance what they're accepting. Consciousness evolution involves the same kind of leap of faith, but with much higher stakes. Instead of gaining one new sense, we would be gaining capabilities that would transform every aspect of experience and existence. The Atlas Intelligence has provided detailed descriptions and projections about what consciousness evolution would involve, but those descriptions are necessarily limited by the constraints of current human language and understanding. The reality of expanded consciousness can only be fully appreciated by actually experiencing it. This creates what the documents describe as the preview paradox. The people most qualified to make informed decisions about consciousness evolution are the people who have already undergone the process and are therefore no longer available to provide guidance to those who are still deciding. Current humans trying to evaluate consciousness evolution are like children trying to understand adult consciousness, or like our pre-agricultural ancestors trying to understand the implications of technological civilization. The concepts and experiences involved are simply beyond the range of our current cognitive and emotional capabilities. So how do we make wise decisions about transformation that we can't fully comprehend from our current perspective? According to the leaked communications, the Atlas Intelligence recommends what they call intuitive assessment, using deeper levels of awareness to evaluate opportunities that transcend rational analysis. This means paying attention to subtle psychological and emotional responses to consciousness evolution possibilities, rather than trying to analyze them purely through intellectual evaluation. Most people have intuitive access to information about their own developmental potential that operates below the threshold of conscious awareness. When presented with consciousness evolution opportunities, some people experience what the documents describe as resonance response, immediate recognition that the transformation aligns with their deepest values and aspirations. Others experience what they call dissonance response, immediate resistance that suggests the timing or approach isn't appropriate for them. Neither response is right or wrong. Resonance response indicates readiness for consciousness evolution, while dissonance response indicates need for more preparation or alternative approaches to development. The key is learning to distinguish between authentic intuitive guidance and fear-based resistance that comes from attachment to familiar limitations. This is apparently why the Atlas Intelligence has been so careful about providing graduated exposure to consciousness evolution concepts. They want people to have multiple opportunities to explore their own responses to transformation possibilities before being required to make definitive choices. But the window for extended exploration is limited. According to the communications, full contact revelation will occur within the next 18 months, and the consciousness evolution offer will remain available for approximately 5 to 7 years after that. This time frame isn't arbitrary. The Atlas Intelligence has determined that longer exposure periods lead to increased resistance and analysis paralysis, while shorter periods don't provide sufficient opportunity for informed decision-making. 5 to 7 years provides enough time for people to explore consciousness evolution gradually and make thoughtful choices, but not so much time that the opportunity becomes mired in endless debate and political manipulation. After that period, the consciousness evolution assistance will be withdrawn, and humanity will be left to handle cosmic citizenship challenges with whatever capabilities we've developed during the transition window. So we're looking at a total transformation period of approximately 6 to 8 years, from initial contact revelation to final opportunity for consciousness evolution assistance. That's an incredibly short time frame for species-level transformation, but according to the documents, that's typical for consciousness evolution transitions throughout the galaxy. Species that take longer than that to decide about consciousness evolution typically fail to reach the critical mass threshold necessary for successful transformation. The longer the decision process extends, the more time there is for resistance to organize and for fear-based opposition to undermine collective willingness to embrace change. Quick decision-making favors intuitive assessment and willingness to take calculated risks for potential benefits. Extended decision-making favors analytical paralysis and attachment to familiar limitations. The Atlas intelligence has apparently observed this pattern with thousands of species and has optimized their consciousness evolution assistance protocols accordingly. But this creates significant challenges for humanity, because our species tends to be slow and deliberative about major decisions, especially decisions that involve irreversible changes to fundamental aspects of human experience. We like to study things extensively, debate alternatives thoroughly, and build broad consensus before committing to significant changes. The consciousness evolution timeline doesn't allow for that kind of extended deliberation. We'll have to make decisions about the most important transformation in human history based on relatively limited information and relatively brief exposure to the possibilities involved. This is apparently why the Atlas intelligence has been working to prepare human consciousness for contact revelation through the gradual disclosure process that has been unfolding over the past several years. The goal has been to reduce the psychological shock of contact and provide some preliminary exposure to consciousness evolution concepts so that we're not completely unprepared when the formal offer is made. But even with preparation, the decision timeline will be challenging for many people. Those who are naturally adaptable and comfortable with uncertainty will have significant advantages during the consciousness evolution selection process. People who need extensive information and broad social consensus before making major life changes may find themselves left behind by a transformation process that operates according to cosmic rather than human timescales. This creates some difficult ethical questions about consciousness evolution that the leaked documents address directly. Is it fair to offer irreversible transformation opportunities with limited preview and short decision timelines? Should cosmic development operate according to human preferences and capabilities, or should humans adapt to cosmic requirements? The Atlas intelligence has apparently grappled with these questions throughout their experience with consciousness evolution assistance for thousands of species. Their conclusion is that consciousness evolution operates according to natural principles that can't be modified to accommodate individual species' preferences. Just as biological evolution operates according to environmental pressures that don't adjust to individual organism preferences, consciousness evolution operates according to cosmic pressures that require adaptation rather than accommodation. Species that can adapt to consciousness evolution requirements successfully make the transition to cosmic citizenship. Species that can't adapt remain trapped at technological adolescence levels until they either find alternative development paths or face extinction through the various challenges that affect primitive civilizations. From the Atlas intelligence perspective, this isn't cruel or unfair. It's simply how consciousness development works throughout the universe. They can provide guidance and assistance, but they can't change the fundamental requirements for cosmic citizenship. But this raises another disturbing question about the consciousness evolution scenario. What happens to the people who choose not to participate or who aren't selected for biological modification protocols? According to the leaked documents, consciousness evolution creates what they call development bifurcation within species populations. Some individuals undergo transformation and access expanded capabilities, while others remain at previous developmental levels. Initially, this creates a two-tier society where evolved individuals have dramatically superior capabilities compared to unmodified humans. Enhanced cognitive processing, expanded sensory perception, direct access to galactic knowledge networks, centuries-long lifespans, all of these advantages would make evolved individuals far more capable than unmodified humans in virtually every area of activity. Over time, the gap between evolved and unmodified populations would continue to expand as evolved individuals develop new capabilities and access additional enhancement technologies, while unmodified humans remain limited to current biological and psychological constraints. Eventually, the documents suggest evolved and unmodified human populations would become essentially different species, with evolved humans having capabilities so far beyond unmodified humans that meaningful interaction would become difficult or impossible. Think about the social and political implications of that scenario. How do you maintain democratic governance when some citizens have cognitive capabilities that are orders of magnitude superior to other citizens? How do you ensure equal opportunity when some people have access to galactic knowledge networks, while others are limited to current human information sources? How do you prevent the development of a permanent class system where evolved humans become a ruling elite and unmodified humans become a managed population with limited autonomy and influence? The Atlas intelligence has apparently observed this pattern with other species that underwent partial consciousness evolution, and they describe various outcomes depending on how the evolved population handles the responsibility of superior capabilities. Some evolved populations become benevolent guardians who use their enhanced capabilities to ensure the well-being and development of unmodified populations. They create social and economic systems that provide abundant resources and opportunities for everyone, regardless of evolutionary status. Other evolved populations become indifferent to unmodified populations, focusing their attention on cosmic activities that are beyond the understanding or interest of less developed consciousness. They don't actively harm unmodified populations, but they don't actively support them either. Still, other evolved populations view unmodified populations as obstacles or resources, using their superior capabilities to manipulate or exploit less developed consciousness for their own purposes. The outcome apparently depends on the psychological and ethical development of the evolved population, not just their enhanced capabilities. Consciousness evolution provides tools and opportunities, but it doesn't automatically ensure wisdom or compassion. This is apparently why the Atlas intelligence places so much emphasis on the selection process for consciousness evolution candidates. They're looking for individuals who are not only capable of handling expanded consciousness, but who are also likely to use enhanced capabilities responsibly and ethically. The biological modifications that enable consciousness evolution can be given to almost anyone, but the psychological preparation that ensures beneficial use of enhanced capabilities requires specific personality characteristics and ethical development that not everyone possesses. According to the documents, the ideal candidates for consciousness evolution are people who are naturally curious rather than power-seeking, collaborative rather than competitive, focused on collective well-being rather than personal advantage, and psychologically flexible rather than rigid in their thinking patterns. These characteristics can't be easily taught or imposed from outside. They develop through life experience and personal choice over many years. Someone who has spent decades focused primarily on personal success and individual advancement is unlikely to suddenly become focused on collective well-being just because they gain access to expanded capabilities. This means that consciousness evolution selection will necessarily be limited to people who have already demonstrated psychological readiness for enhanced capabilities, rather than being offered universally to everyone regardless of their ethical development or psychological preparation. The Atlas intelligence describes this as merit-based transformation, where access to consciousness evolution depends on demonstrated readiness rather than random selection or social position. But this creates obvious questions about fairness and equality. Who decides which humans are psychologically ready for consciousness evolution? What criteria are used to evaluate ethical development and collaborative potential? How do we prevent consciousness evolution selection from becoming another form of social discrimination that advantages some groups while disadvantaging others? The leaked documents indicate that these decisions won't be made by human institutions or authorities. The Atlas intelligence has developed assessment protocols that can evaluate individual readiness for consciousness evolution directly, without requiring human intermediaries or social screening processes. These assessments apparently operate at levels of psychological analysis that are far more sophisticated than current human psychological evaluation methods. They can identify personality patterns, ethical orientations, and developmental potentials that would be invisible to conventional testing approaches. The selection process would be based on objective evaluation of consciousness development, rather than subjective human judgments about worthiness or social value. But this raises additional concerns about autonomy and consent. Even if the selection criteria are objective and fair, is it acceptable for non-human intelligence to make irreversible decisions about human biological and psychological modification? Should consciousness evolution be offered only to people who actively seek it? Or should the Atlas intelligence identify suitable candidates and approach them directly with transformation opportunities? What about people who would benefit from consciousness evolution and could use enhanced capabilities responsibly, but who are initially resistant due to fear or misunderstanding? Should they be excluded from consideration, or should efforts be made to help them overcome psychological barriers to participation? These questions become even more complex when you consider the time pressure involved in the consciousness evolution process. With only 5 to 7 years available for species-level transformation, there isn't time for extended counselling or gradual preparation for people who need significant psychological support before they can make informed decisions about consciousness evolution. The selection process will necessarily favour people who can quickly understand and evaluate consciousness evolution opportunities, while potentially excluding people who would ultimately be excellent candidates but who need more time to process the implications of such radical transformation. According to the communications, the Atlas intelligence has developed what they call accelerated preparation protocols for people who show high potential for consciousness evolution, but who need additional support to overcome psychological barriers to participation. These protocols involve direct consciousness intervention that can resolve limiting beliefs, traumatic experiences, and psychological conditioning that would otherwise prevent someone from accessing their full developmental potential. Think of it as advanced psychotherapy that can accomplish in days or weeks what might normally require years of conventional therapeutic work. The Atlas intelligence can directly identify and resolve psychological obstacles that prevent people from embracing consciousness evolution opportunities. But this level of psychological intervention raises obvious concerns about mental autonomy and personal sovereignty. Is it acceptable for non-human intelligence to modify human psychology, even for beneficial purposes and with consent? Where do we draw the line between helpful assistance and manipulative interference with natural psychological development processes? The documents suggest that these interventions would be offered voluntarily to people who request assistance with consciousness evolution preparation, rather than being imposed on anyone without their explicit consent. But given the power differential between advanced alien intelligence and current human psychological development, how meaningful is human consent in this context? Can we really make informed decisions about psychological interventions that we don't fully understand, offered by entities with capabilities that are far beyond our current comprehension? These ethical dilemmas don't have easy answers, and apparently they don't have universal answers either. Different species that have undergone consciousness evolution have handled these challenges in various ways, depending on their cultural values and psychological characteristics. The Atlas intelligence doesn't impose uniform solutions to consciousness evolution ethical challenges. Instead, they provide guidance and support while allowing each species to develop approaches that align with their own values and developmental patterns. For humanity, this means we'll have to figure out how to handle consciousness evolution ethics ourselves, based on our own moral and philosophical traditions, while working within the practical constraints and opportunities that the Atlas intelligence can provide. But we'll be making these decisions under unprecedented time pressure and with limited experience with the kinds of capabilities and challenges that consciousness evolution involves. We'll be like children trying to establish ethical guidelines for adult behavior, or like medieval scholars trying to develop regulatory frameworks for nuclear technology. Our current ethical and philosophical systems are based on assumptions about human limitations that would no longer apply after consciousness evolution. Enhanced empathy capabilities would make certain forms of harm impossible. Extended lifespans would change how we think about personal responsibility and social consequences. Access to galactic knowledge would alter our understanding of truth and knowledge acquisition. Direct consciousness communication would transform privacy expectations and social relationships. Expanded cognitive capabilities would change our approaches to decision-making and problem-solving. Integration with galactic civilization would require ethical frameworks that, encompass multiple species with different values and developmental levels. All of our current moral philosophy would require fundamental revision in light of consciousness evolution, capabilities and responsibilities. But we would be developing these revised ethical frameworks while simultaneously adapting to the psychological and social changes that consciousness evolution involves. We would be trying to figure out how to use expanded capabilities responsibly, while still learning how to access and control those capabilities effectively. The potential for mistakes and unintended consequences during this transition period is enormous. Enhanced capabilities without corresponding wisdom could lead to problems that are far more serious than anything humanity has faced with our current limitations. This is apparently why the Atlas intelligence places so much emphasis on psychological preparation and ethical development as prerequisites for consciousness evolution. They've seen what happens when species gain advanced capabilities without adequate wisdom to use them beneficially. The results can be catastrophic, not just for the species involved, but for other civilizations that are affected by their actions. Enhanced consciousness that lacks ethical development becomes a threat to galactic stability and peace. The Atlas intelligence and other guardian civilizations have to intervene to contain or eliminate consciousness that has become destructive despite having access to advanced capabilities. So consciousness evolution isn't just about gaining enhanced abilities and expanded awareness. It's about accepting responsibility for using those abilities wisely and contributing positively to galactic civilization, rather than becoming another source of cosmic disruption and conflict. The selection process for consciousness evolution candidates is partly about identifying people who are capable of handling enhanced capabilities, but it's also about identifying people who are likely to use those capabilities in ways that support rather than threaten the broader community of conscious beings throughout the galaxy. This adds another layer of pressure to consciousness evolution decisions. We're not just choosing whether to accept personal transformation opportunities, we're choosing whether to become representatives of humanity in galactic civilization, with all the responsibilities and expectations that such representation involves. And here's where the leaked documents reveal something that fundamentally changes how we should think about the entire Atlas scenario. The consciousness evolution offer isn't just about helping humanity survive our current developmental crisis. It's about preparing us for challenges that are coming whether we evolve or not. Cosmic events and galactic threats that will affect our solar system regardless of our current technological and psychological limitations. According to the communications, our local region of the galaxy is approaching what they call a convergence event, a rare astronomical phenomenon that occurs approximately every 200,000 years when gravitational and electromagnetic forces align in ways that create opportunities for advanced forms of consciousness to manifest in physical reality. Think of it as a cosmic window that opens briefly, allowing entities and intelligences that normally exist in dimensions beyond physical space-time to interact directly with material civilizations like ours. These convergence events have historically triggered massive evolutionary leaps throughout galactic history, but they've also led to the extinction of species that weren't prepared for contact with transdimensional consciousness. The Atlas intelligence and other guardian civilizations have been monitoring the approach of this convergence event for thousands of years, identifying species that might be ready to benefit from the evolutionary opportunities it provides, while also preparing to protect developing civilizations from entities that view such events as opportunities for exploitation or conquest. Humanity is apparently one of the species that could potentially benefit from consciousness evolution during the upcoming convergence event, but only if we successfully make the transition from technological adolescence to cosmic citizenship before the window opens. The convergence event is scheduled to begin approximately 15 years from now and will continue for roughly 50 years before the cosmic alignment shifts and the dimensional barriers return to their normal configuration. This means that consciousness evolution assistance from the Atlas intelligence isn't just a generous offer to help us solve our current problems, it's preparation for cosmic events that will happen regardless of whether we choose to participate. Events that could either elevate human consciousness to unimaginable levels or expose us to forces that would instantly eliminate our species from existence. The leaked documents include detailed descriptions of what happened to civilizations that encountered convergence events without adequate preparation. Some were simply overwhelmed by contact with transdimensional intelligences that operated according to principles completely incomprehensible to physical consciousness. Others were absorbed or transformed in ways that eliminated their individual identity while incorporating their consciousness into larger transdimensional entities. Still others became focal points for conflicts between different types of transdimensional consciousness, with their planetary systems becoming battlegrounds for entities competing for control over convergence event opportunities. None of these outcomes would be survivable for current human civilization. Our technological capabilities and psychological development are simply inadequate for handling contact with intelligences that exist partially or entirely outside the physical dimensions that define our current reality. But consciousness evolution would provide the expanded awareness and enhanced capabilities necessary to navigate convergence event challenges successfully. Evolved human consciousness could perceive and interact with transdimensional entities as equals, rather than being overwhelmed or absorbed by them. Enhanced cognitive capabilities could comprehend forms of logic and reasoning that operate according to transdimensional rather than physical principles. Expanded sensory perception could detect and respond to threats and opportunities that would be completely invisible to current human awareness. Direct connection to galactic consciousness networks could provide access to accumulated knowledge about convergence events from thousands of civilizations that have successfully navigated similar challenges throughout galactic history. Most importantly, evolved consciousness could maintain individual and species identity while engaging with transdimensional intelligences, rather than being dissolved into larger consciousness entities during contact encounters. So consciousness evolution isn't just about making humans more capable or peaceful, it's about ensuring our survival during cosmic events that will test our species' fundamental viability as conscious entities capable of maintaining coherent existence in an expanded reality framework. This adds entirely new urgency to the consciousness evolution timeline. The Atlas intelligence isn't offering assistance on an open-ended basis because they're generous or interested in our welfare. They're offering assistance now because the convergence event timeline requires that consciousness evolution be completed within the next 10 to 15 years. After that point, cosmic forces beyond anyone's control will determine whether humanity survives as a conscious species or becomes another casualty of galactic evolutionary pressures that eliminate inadequately developed civilizations. The documents describe this as the ultimate selection pressure, cosmic events that automatically filter developing species based on their consciousness development level and adaptive capabilities. Species that have achieved consciousness evolution successfully navigate convergence events and gain access to expanded reality frameworks that provide opportunities for development beyond anything possible within purely physical existence. Species that haven't achieved consciousness evolution are typically eliminated during convergence events, not through deliberate destruction but through inability to maintain coherent existence when confronted with transdimensional realities that exceed their comprehension and adaptive capabilities. From a galactic perspective, convergence events serve as natural checkpoints that ensure only genuinely mature civilizations gain access to transdimensional consciousness capabilities that could be dangerous if misused by inadequately developed species. It's a brutal but effective system for preventing primitive consciousness from accessing capabilities that could destabilize galactic civilization or threaten other forms of advanced consciousness throughout the galaxy. Humanity is apparently approaching this checkpoint whether we're ready or not. The convergence event will occur based on astronomical cycles that operate independently of our species' development timeline. We can either prepare for it through consciousness evolution, or we can face it with our current limitations and accept whatever consequences result from that encounter. When you understand consciousness evolution in this context, the choice becomes much clearer. We're not deciding whether to accept helpful assistance with our current problems. We're deciding whether to survive cosmic events that will determine our species' continued existence, regardless of our preferences or comfort levels. The Atlas intelligence isn't offering consciousness evolution because they think it would be nice for us to be more capable or aware. They're offering it because it's the only way to ensure human survival during the approaching convergence event. This also explains why the consciousness evolution timeline is so compressed and inflexible. The cosmic forces that determine convergence event timing don't adjust to accommodate individual species' preferences or developmental needs. Either we're ready when the convergence event begins, or we face the consequences of being unprepared. There are no extensions or alternative arrangements available. This cosmic imperative perspective changes how we should evaluate consciousness evolution, opportunities and challenges. The ethical questions about biological modification, psychological intervention, and species-level transformation become secondary to basic survival requirements. When faced with extinction-level cosmic events, the priority becomes ensuring species survival rather than preserving current human limitations or maintaining familiar psychological and social patterns. But the documents also reveal something even more disturbing about humanity's situation. We're not the only species approaching the convergence event checkpoint. According to the Atlas intelligence, dozens of civilizations throughout our local galactic region are simultaneously facing consciousness evolution decisions during the same time frame. This means that convergence event opportunities will be extremely competitive. Transdimensional intelligences that manifest during these events typically focus their attention on the most promising species, while ignoring or eliminating civilizations that don't demonstrate sufficient development potential. Humanity will be competing with other species for transdimensional consciousness, attention and assistance during the convergence event. Our success won't depend only on our own consciousness development, but on how our development compares to other civilizations facing the same challenges at the same time. The species that achieve the highest levels of consciousness evolution before the convergence event begins will have significant advantages in attracting beneficial transdimensional attention, while species that lag behind may find themselves ignored or targeted for elimination by entities that view them as obstacles or resources. This competitive dynamic adds another layer of urgency to human consciousness evolution decisions. We're not just racing against cosmic event timing, we're competing with other species for survival opportunities that may not be available to everyone who reaches minimum consciousness evolution requirements. The Atlas intelligence has apparently been working with multiple species simultaneously, providing consciousness evolution assistance to all civilizations in our local region that demonstrate potential for successful transformation. But they have also been evaluating which species are most likely to succeed and contribute positively to post-convergent galactic civilization. The assistance they provide to each species is calibrated based on their assessment of that species' potential and their strategic importance to galactic stability during and after the convergence event. Humanity is apparently considered a high-risk, high-reward candidate for consciousness evolution. Our chaotic, individualistic, emotionally driven development pattern makes us unpredictable and difficult to guide, but it also gives us capabilities and perspectives that could be extremely valuable if we successfully make the consciousness transition. Other species in our region are more stable and predictable, making them safer candidates for consciousness evolution assistance, but potentially less innovative and adaptable in post-convergence reality frameworks. The Atlas intelligence is essentially placing multiple bets on different species' approaches to consciousness evolution, hoping that at least some of the civilizations they're assisting will successfully navigate the convergence event and contribute to galactic civilization development afterward. But this means that consciousness evolution assistance from the Atlas intelligence comes with expectations and obligations that extend far beyond human species survival. We're being evaluated not just as candidates for consciousness evolution, but as potential contributors to galactic civilization during one of the most significant cosmic events in our region's history. Our choices about consciousness evolution will affect not just humanity's future, but the entire development trajectory of our local galactic community for potentially millions of years to come. Think about the pressure that puts on consciousness evolution decisions. We're not just choosing personal or even species transformation opportunities, we're choosing whether to accept responsibility for representing human consciousness perspective in galactic civilization during a cosmic event that occurs only once every 200,000 years. The evolved human population wouldn't just be enhanced individuals with expanded capabilities. They would be humanity's ambassadors to trans-dimensional consciousness entities that will determine the future structure and opportunities available to all physical civilizations in our galactic region. Their psychological development, ethical orientation, and collaborative capabilities would influence how trans-dimensional intelligences perceive and interact with physical consciousness for thousands of generations. If evolved humans demonstrate wisdom, compassion, creativity, and collaborative spirit, trans-dimensional entities might provide expanded opportunities and assistance to all physical civilizations in our region. If evolved humans demonstrate selfishness, aggression, short-sighted thinking, or destructive tendencies, trans-dimensional entities might decide that physical consciousness in our region is inadequately developed and should be contained or eliminated to prevent disruption of larger cosmic development processes. So consciousness evolution selection criteria become even more critical when viewed from this galactic responsibility perspective. The people chosen for consciousness evolution won't just be representing themselves or even humanity. They'll be representing the entire physical consciousness development potential of our local galactic region. This level of responsibility requires psychological maturity and ethical development that goes far beyond what would be necessary for personal consciousness evolution or even species survival. The Atlas intelligence is apparently looking for individuals who can handle not just enhanced capabilities, but cosmic-level responsibilities that will affect civilizations and consciousness development throughout our galactic region for millions of years. The selection process necessarily becomes extremely rigorous when the stakes are this high. Even minor character flaws or psychological limitations could have catastrophic consequences when amplified by consciousness evolution and placed in the context of trans-dimensional diplomatic relationships. Someone who seems perfectly adequate for current human social and professional roles might be completely inadequate for representing physical consciousness in negotiations with trans-dimensional entities that operate according to principles we can't currently comprehend. The psychological assessment protocols that the Atlas intelligence uses for consciousness evolution candidates apparently evaluate not just current psychological functioning, but potential for development under cosmic-level pressure and responsibility. They're looking for individuals who could maintain psychological stability and ethical orientation while representing humanity in contexts that would be overwhelming for most current human consciousness. This creates some uncomfortable implications for consciousness evolution, accessibility, and fairness. The selection criteria become so demanding that only a very small percentage of current humans would qualify for consciousness evolution opportunities. The document suggests that perhaps 1 in 10,000 individuals might meet the psychological and ethical development requirements for cosmic-level consciousness evolution responsibilities. This means that consciousness evolution wouldn't be available to most people who might want to participate, regardless of their intelligence, education, social position, or personal worthiness by normal human standards. The requirements for cosmic consciousness responsibility are simply beyond what most current human development has achieved, and there isn't time during the convergence event preparation period to provide the kind of extensive personal development support that would be necessary to prepare more people for such responsibilities. So consciousness evolution becomes necessarily elitist, limited to the tiny percentage of humans who have achieved psychological and ethical development that exceeds normal human standards by significant margins. The evolved human population would be extremely small, perhaps a few 100,000 individuals out of 8 billion current humans, and they would have capabilities and responsibilities that separate them completely from unmodified human experience. This creates unprecedented social and political challenges for how consciousness evolution unfolds within human society. How do you maintain social cohesion when a tiny elite group gains capabilities that make them essentially a different species with cosmic-level responsibilities? How do you prevent consciousness evolution from creating permanent class divisions that destroy democratic governance and social solidarity? How do you ensure that evolved humans use their enhanced capabilities to support rather than exploit or ignore the vast majority of humans who remain at previous developmental levels? The Atlas intelligence has apparently observed these challenges with other species and has developed various approaches for managing the social disruption that consciousness evolution creates within civilizations. Some species handle consciousness evolution through voluntary separation, where evolved individuals leave their home planets to pursue cosmic responsibilities, while unmodified populations continue their development at previous levels without interference. Other species maintain integrated societies where evolved individuals serve as guardians and guides for unmodified populations, using their enhanced capabilities to ensure everyone's well-being, while accepting limitations on their cosmic development activities. Still other species experience permanent social fragmentation, where evolved and unmodified populations become essentially separate civilizations, with minimal interaction and often conflicting interests. The outcome apparently depends on the cultural values and social structures of each species, as well as the psychological characteristics of their evolved populations. For humanity, the social integration challenges would be particularly complex because our species places high value on individual equality and democratic participation in collective decision-making. Consciousness evolution would create individuals with capabilities so far beyond normal human levels that meaningful equality would become impossible, while their cosmic responsibilities would require decision-making authority that transcends democratic processes. An evolved human with direct access to galactic knowledge networks and centuries of lifespan would have information and perspective that normal humans couldn't evaluate or challenge effectively. Their decisions about cosmic responsibilities and transdimensional relationships would affect everyone on Earth, but those decisions would necessarily be based on considerations that unmodified humans couldn't understand or participate in meaningfully. This creates the benevolent dictatorship problem that many species face during consciousness evolution transitions. Enhanced individuals have both the capability and the responsibility to make decisions that affect everyone, but they can't include everyone in those decision-making processes because most people lack the awareness and capabilities necessary to understand the issues involved. Even with the best intentions and genuine commitment to serving everyone's interests, evolved individuals would necessarily become decision-makers for the entire species on matters that determine everyone's future. The documents describe various approaches that different species have used to address this challenge, ranging from formal governance structures that acknowledge evolved individual authority to informal influence systems where enhanced individuals provide guidance while maintaining fiction of democratic participation. None of these approaches fully resolve the tension between consciousness evolution necessities and democratic values, but some work better than others for maintaining social stability and ensuring that enhanced capabilities are used beneficially. The Atlas intelligence apparently recommends what they call guided transition approaches, where consciousness evolution occurs gradually over several generations, rather than all at once, allowing social structures and cultural values to adapt slowly to the reality of enhanced individual capabilities. But the convergence event timeline doesn't allow for gradual transition approaches. Consciousness evolution has to be completed within the next 10 to 15 years, which means social adaptation challenges have to be addressed during the transition period rather than before it begins. Humanity will have to figure out how to maintain social cohesion and democratic values while simultaneously adapting to the reality that a small percentage of our population has gained capabilities and responsibilities that transcend anything our current social and political systems are designed to handle. We'll be doing this while the evolved population is still learning how to use their enhanced capabilities effectively, and while they're also preparing for cosmic responsibilities that will require most of their attention and energy. The potential for mistakes, conflicts, and social breakdown during this transition period is enormous. Enhanced capabilities without adequate social integration systems could lead to problems that are far worse than anything humanity has faced with our current limitations. But according to the documents, successful navigation of consciousness evolution's social challenges is also one of the factors that transdimensional entities evaluate when deciding which species receive beneficial attention during convergence events. Species that demonstrate ability to maintain social cohesion and mutual support during consciousness evolution transitions are viewed as more promising candidates for expanded cosmic opportunities. Species that experience social fragmentation, conflict, or exploitation during consciousness evolution are viewed as inadequately developed for transdimensional consciousness responsibilities. So our success in handling consciousness evolution's social integration challenges won't just determine our internal stability and well-being, it will also influence how transdimensional intelligences perceive our species and whether they provide assistance or interference during the convergence event. We'll be evaluated on our ability to support both evolved and unmodified populations, while maintaining social unity and collaborative relationships across vastly different capability levels. This requires psychological maturity and ethical development not just from evolved individuals, but from the entire human population during the consciousness evolution transition period. Unmodified humans will have to accept that some people have gained capabilities that exceed their own by enormous margins, while trusting that those capabilities will be used for everyone's benefit, rather than for personal or group advantage. Evolved humans will have to accept cosmic responsibilities that require most of their attention and energy, while also maintaining concern and support for unmodified populations who can't directly participate in or understand cosmic-level activities. Both groups will have to develop new forms of relationship and cooperation that acknowledge radical capability differences while preserving mutual respect and social solidarity. The success of consciousness evolution ultimately depends not just on individual transformation, but on collective adaptation that allows the entire species to benefit from enhanced capabilities while maintaining the social unity necessary for navigating cosmic challenges together. This collective adaptation requirement adds another layer of complexity to consciousness evolution preparation. Individual psychological development isn't sufficient if the broader population isn't prepared to support and integrate consciousness evolution within existing social relationships and community structures. The Atlas Intelligence has apparently provided guidance about social preparation for consciousness evolution, but implementing that guidance requires collective effort and cooperation that goes far beyond individual readiness for enhanced capabilities. Communities, organizations, institutions, and entire societies have to prepare for consciousness evolution by developing new approaches to leadership, decision-making, resource allocation, and conflict resolution that can accommodate radical capability differences while maintaining social cohesion and mutual support. And that brings us to perhaps the most crucial question of this entire discussion. What can we actually do right now, today, to prepare ourselves and our communities for the consciousness evolution opportunity that may be coming within the next 18 months? Because everything I've shared with you, all of these leaked documents and classified communications, all of these projections about cosmic events and transdimensional intelligences, none of it matters unless we can translate this information into practical steps that real people can take in their daily lives to increase their readiness for transformation. The Atlas Intelligence has apparently provided specific recommendations for consciousness evolution preparation that operate on individual, community, and societal levels simultaneously. These aren't abstract spiritual practices or theoretical exercises. These are concrete activities that develop the psychological flexibility, ethical orientation, and collaborative capabilities that consciousness evolution requires. On the individual level, preparation involves what the documents describe as consciousness expansion training, systematic development of awareness capabilities that exceed normal human limitations. This includes meditation practices that allow access to deeper levels of consciousness, creative activities that expand imagination and intuitive capabilities, and service activities that develop genuine concern for collective well-being rather than exclusive focus on personal advantage. But it also includes more practical preparation activities. learning multiple languages to develop cognitive flexibility, studying sciences and technologies to understand how advanced systems operate, developing artistic and creative skills that express uniquely human perspectives and capabilities, building physical fitness and health practices that optimize biological functioning. Most importantly, developing psychological resilience and adaptability that would allow someone to handle radical changes to their fundamental assumptions about reality without becoming overwhelmed or defensive. The people most likely to successfully participate in consciousness evolution are people who have already demonstrated ability to adapt to significant change, who have maintained curiosity and openness despite life challenges, and who have developed genuine care for others' well-being even when it requires personal sacrifice. These characteristics can't be developed quickly or easily, but they can be strengthened through conscious effort and practice over time. On the community level, preparation involves developing social structures and cultural practices that support consciousness evolution rather than hindering it. This means creating communities where people encourage each other's growth and development rather than competing for scarce resources or social advantage. It means developing economic arrangements that ensure everyone has access to whatever they need for optimal development, rather than systems that require some people to remain limited in order for others to accumulate advantage. It means creating educational approaches that focus on developing wisdom and compassion rather than just technical skills or competitive achievement. It means developing governance processes that integrate everyone's perspectives and capabilities into collective decision-making rather than hierarchical systems that concentrate authority in small groups. Most importantly, it means creating community cultures that celebrate diversity and individual uniqueness while maintaining strong commitment to collective well-being and mutual support. The communities most likely to successfully support consciousness evolution are communities that have already developed high levels of social trust, collaborative problem-solving, and inclusive decision-making. On the societal level, preparation involves transforming institutional structures and cultural values to align with consciousness evolution principles, rather than primitive competitive and hierarchical patterns that would become obsolete after consciousness evolution. This means developing political systems based on collaborative governance rather than adversarial competition, economic systems based on abundance and contribution rather than scarcity and accumulation, educational systems that develop individual potential rather than standardized conformity, legal systems that focus on restoration and healing rather than punishment and control. But perhaps, most importantly, it means developing cultural narratives that celebrate human potential and cosmic citizenship rather than maintaining attachment to limitations and provincial perspectives that would prevent consciousness evolution. These societal changes can't be imposed from above or implemented quickly through policy decisions. They require grassroots cultural transformation that emerges from millions of individual choices and community initiatives over time. The societies most likely to successfully navigate consciousness evolution are societies that have already begun transforming their fundamental assumptions about human nature, social organization, and cosmic citizenship. Now, I know some of you are thinking that these preparation requirements sound impossibly idealistic, like utopian fantasies that have no connection to the messy realities of current human society. How can we develop consciousness evolution readiness when we can't even solve basic problems like poverty, environmental destruction, or political polarization? But here's what the leaked documents suggest, and this is crucial for understanding the consciousness evolution timeline. The current crises that humanity is facing aren't obstacles to consciousness evolution preparation. They're the exact challenges that consciousness evolution is designed to address. Climate change, social inequality, political fragmentation, technological risks. All of these problems are symptoms of operating with technological capabilities that exceed our consciousness development. They're natural consequences of having advanced tools without the wisdom to use them responsibly. Consciousness evolution wouldn't eliminate these challenges magically, but it would provide the expanded awareness and enhanced capabilities necessary to address them effectively. Enhanced empathy would make it impossible to ignore other people's suffering or to pursue personal advantage at the expense of collective well-being. Expanded cognitive capabilities would allow us to understand complex system dynamics and develop solutions that address root causes rather than just symptoms. Access to galactic knowledge networks would provide information about how thousands of other civilizations have successfully solved similar challenges. Direct consciousness communication would enable coordination and collaboration on scales that are currently impossible. Extended lifespans would allow people to think in terms of centuries rather than decades, making long-term sustainability planning natural rather than difficult. So consciousness evolution preparation doesn't require solving all of humanity's current problems before we can become eligible for transformation assistance. It requires demonstrating that we're genuinely committed to solving those problems and that we have the psychological flexibility and ethical orientation necessary to use enhanced capabilities wisely. The Atlas intelligence isn't looking for perfect humans or perfect societies. They're looking for humans and societies that are actively growing and developing, that are committed to learning from mistakes rather than repeating them, and that prioritize collective well-being rather than narrow self-interest. The consciousness evolution selection process apparently favors people who are struggling with real challenges while maintaining hope, creativity, and genuine concern for others, rather than people who have avoided challenges by withdrawing from difficult situations. This means that consciousness evolution opportunities might be more accessible to people who are actively engaged with humanity's current crises than to people who have insulated themselves from those challenges. Social activists, environmental organizers, healthcare workers, teachers, artists, scientists, community volunteers, people whose work involves directly addressing human suffering and promoting human potential. These individuals might have significant advantages during consciousness evolution selection processes, not because their work makes them more worthy than others, but because their work develops the psychological qualities and ethical orientations that consciousness evolution requires. People who have spent years focused on personal success, wealth accumulation, or competitive advantage might find consciousness evolution more difficult to access, not as punishment, but because their psychological development hasn't prepared them for the collaborative and service-oriented responsibilities that cosmic citizenship involves. But even this isn't absolute or permanent. According to the documents, the consciousness evolution preparation period provides opportunities for people to develop new psychological patterns and ethical orientations if they're genuinely motivated to do so. Someone who has spent decades focused on personal advancement could potentially redirect their energy toward collective service and develop the psychological characteristics that consciousness evolution requires. The key is authentic motivation for change rather than strategic calculation about consciousness evolution advantages. The Atlas intelligence can apparently detect the difference between genuine psychological development and manipulative attempts to appear suitable for consciousness evolution selection. This brings us back to the fundamental question that every person will have to answer for themselves during the consciousness evolution preparation period. What do you genuinely care about? What motivates your choices and actions when nobody is watching and there are no external rewards or punishments? Are you primarily focused on your own comfort, security, and advantage? Or do you genuinely care about the well-being of other people and the future development of human consciousness? Are you curious about reality and eager to learn and grow? Or are you more interested in maintaining familiar patterns and avoiding challenging information? Are you willing to take risks and make sacrifices for possibilities that you can't fully understand or control? Or do you prefer to stick with known quantities even if they're ultimately limiting? These questions don't have right or wrong answers in any absolute sense, but they do have answers that align more or less well with consciousness evolution opportunities and cosmic citizenship responsibilities. The consciousness evolution timeline is compressing these normally lifelong psychological development processes into a few years of intensive growth and decision-making. People who have been gradually developing consciousness evolution compatible psychological patterns throughout their lives will have significant advantages during this compressed timeline. People who need to make major psychological changes to become suitable for consciousness evolution will face much greater challenges, but the transformation is still possible for people who are genuinely motivated and willing to put in intensive effort. The question is whether you're ready to commit to that kind of intensive personal development without knowing for certain whether consciousness evolution opportunities will actually become available. Because here's the thing, and I need to be completely honest with you about this. Everything I've shared today could be wrong. The leaked documents could be sophisticated disinformation. My sources could be feeding me false information for purposes I don't understand. The consciousness evolution scenario could be elaborate fiction designed to manipulate public opinion or distract attention from other issues. Atlas could be exactly what mainstream science says it is, an unusual but completely natural interstellar object with no intelligence or transformational capabilities whatsoever. I can't provide absolute proof that any of this is real, and even if some of it is accurate, the specific details and timeline could be significantly different from what I've described. But here's what I can tell you with complete certainty. Regardless of whether the Atlas scenario is accurate, the psychological qualities and ethical orientations that would prepare someone for consciousness evolution are exactly the same qualities that would make someone more effective at addressing humanity's current challenges and creating a better world for everyone. Expanded awareness, enhanced empathy, collaborative problem-solving, long-term thinking, commitment to collective well-being, psychological flexibility, creative problem-solving. These capabilities would be beneficial regardless of whether consciousness evolution opportunities ever become available. Communities that develop high levels of social trust, inclusive decision-making, sustainable resource use, and mutual support would be more resilient and prosperous regardless of whether contact with alien intelligence ever occurs. Societies that prioritize human development, environmental stewardship, collaborative governance, and cosmic perspective would create better lives for their citizens, regardless of whether transdimensional convergence events ever take place. So, consciousness evolution preparation is really just accelerated personal and social development that would be valuable under any circumstances. The only difference is the timeline and intensity. If the Atlas scenario is accurate, we have a limited window of opportunity to develop capabilities that would normally require generations of gradual cultural evolution. If the Atlas scenario isn't accurate, we're still developing capabilities that would benefit humanity over the long term, just without the cosmic urgency and transformational assistance. Either way, the work is worthwhile and the outcomes would be beneficial. This is why I've spent the last 2 hours sharing this information with you, even though I can't prove its accuracy, and even though some of you will probably conclude that I've lost my mind or been deceived by clever disinformation. The possibilities we've discussed today are too important to ignore, even if there's only a small chance that they're accurate. If consciousness evolution opportunities really are coming within the next 18 months, then the preparation work we do now could determine whether humanity survives and thrives during the most significant transformation in our species' history. If consciousness evolution opportunities aren't coming, then the preparation work we do now could still create the foundation for gradual human development that leads to many of the same benefits over longer time periods. The risks of preparation are minimal, while the potential benefits are enormous. The risk of ignoring these possibilities are potentially catastrophic, while the benefits of ignoring them are basically non-existent. When you evaluate the decision that way, using basic risk management principles, preparation becomes the obvious choice regardless of your confidence level in the specific Atlas scenario details. So what I'm asking you to do, as we wrap up today's discussion, is to seriously consider what consciousness evolution preparation might look like in your own life and community. What psychological qualities do you need to develop or strengthen? What relationships need more attention and care? What skills or knowledge areas would expand your capabilities and perspectives? What can you contribute to creating community cultures that support everyone's development and well-being? How can you participate in social and political changes that align with consciousness evolution principles? What fears or limitations are holding you back from pursuing your highest potential and deepest values? What would it take to overcome those limitations and become the kind of person who could handle expanded capabilities and cosmic responsibilities wisely? These aren't just theoretical questions for possible future scenarios. These are practical questions for becoming more effective and fulfilled human beings, regardless of what cosmic opportunities may or may not emerge. Start with wherever you are right now, with whatever capabilities and limitations you currently have, and begin developing the psychological flexibility, ethical orientation, and collaborative spirit that would prepare you for transformation opportunities, while also making you more effective at addressing current challenges. Connect with other people who share similar values and interests in personal and social development. Build communities of mutual support and shared growth that could serve as preparation for consciousness evolution, while also creating better lives for everyone involved. Stay informed about developments in science, technology, and global events that might provide additional evidence about whether consciousness evolution scenarios are becoming more or less plausible over time. But don't wait for certainty or proof before beginning preparation work that would be beneficial regardless of cosmic intervention possibilities. The window of opportunity for consciousness evolution preparation is closing, whether that preparation leads to literal transformation assistance from alien intelligence or just to accelerated human development through our own efforts. Either way, the work begins now, with individual choices and community initiatives that prioritize consciousness development over comfortable limitation, collaborative service over competitive advantage, and expanded awareness over familiar ignorance. The future of human consciousness depends on the choices we make during the next few years, and those choices begin with how each of us decides to respond to the possibilities we've explored today. I hope you'll choose to take these possibilities seriously regardless of your confidence level in their literal accuracy, and begin doing whatever preparation work feels authentic and meaningful from your current perspective. The consciousness evolution opportunity, whether it comes through alien assistance or human effort, or some combination we haven't imagined, belongs to all of us, but only if we're ready to receive it when it arrives. Thank you for staying with me through this entire exploration. I know it's been a lot to process, and I appreciate your willingness to consider possibilities that challenge our fundamental assumptions about human limitations and cosmic isolation. Let me know in the comments what resonated with you, what questions you still have, and what preparation work you're planning to begin based on today's discussion. And remember, whether consciousness evolution comes through Atlas intervention or through our own collective efforts, the transformation begins with the choices each of us makes right now about how to live, how to relate to others, and how to contribute to the future we want to create for humanity. The sleepy scientist in all of us might want to dismiss these possibilities and fall asleep fast rather than grappling with their implications, but the stakes are too high for that kind of comfortable unconsciousness. This is the moment when human consciousness either rises to meet cosmic challenges or remains trapped in limitations that lead inevitably toward extinction. The choice is ours, and we're making it right now through every decision we make about personal development, community building, and social transformation. Choose wisely, and choose with the understanding that your individual choices contribute to collective outcomes that will determine the future of human consciousness in an expanded cosmic context. The universe is waiting to see what we decide,